So for the film project, I chose the movie Flash of Genius, which was about a man named Robert Kearns who invented the intermittent windshield wipers, which are the intermittent windshield wipers are the windshield wipers that we have on our cars today that have different settings. So there's like pauses between the different swipes on the window that you can vary depending on the intensity of the rain. The film started out with this man, Robert Kearns, and his family driving in a car on a very rainy day, and he starts to notice problems with the windshield wipers. If he turns them off, it was impossible for him to see, and it was dangerous for him and his family, but if he left them on, it was squeaky and annoying. So he decided to do something about that and went down into his basement that night and started to work on creating a windshield wiper that you could change varying on the intensity of the rain, and also that wouldn't squeak and continuously be going back and forth while it was raining and you were driving. After that, so he was in his basement. Him and two of his sons, he had 6 kids, and 2 of his sons decided to start working on this windshield wiper, and they made the wiper and got it working inside of an aquarium, which was really interesting and really creative and intelligent, I thought. And they got it to work, and they got it to go at different speeds and modes. And what they would do is they would spray water with a water bottle on the side of the aquarium, and then the windshield wiper and the motor would get it going, and then it would pause between swipes. And right after they got it done, all the kids were down there, and they could time it perfectly, and the windshield wipers would go. He decided that his idea was worth pursuing, so he went to a law firm company and got the idea patented. And him and his lawyers decided to go to Ford with the idea, because Ford was like the the best of the best when it came to cars. So they took it to Ford, and while he was meeting with Ford, Robert Kearns was meeting with Ford, he would not let them look under the hood at all. When he was showing them, he backed the car up so they couldn't see the mechanics behind the windshield wipers that were working. He was very protective of his work, and he wanted it to be his work, and he wanted the credit for it. He also wanted to manufacture them himself. He didn't want to give his design to anybody else. He wanted it to be him and his children working on it. So they made what they called the blinking eye windshield wiper, because the idea that Kearns had that made him think that there should be pauses between the wipes is that your eyes have a time period before they blink, so why shouldn't a windshield wiper have a time period before it goes and swipes again for the rain? So he took it to Ford, and Ford said that if he wanted to pursue this and get Ford to buy the product from him, they would need to let him, or he would need to let them look under the hood of the car and look at the mechanics and make sure that the windshield wiper worked under all conditions, whether it was optimal or not optimal conditions. But they had to work whether it was super hot out, or it was pouring rain, or it was drizzling. They needed to make sure that every single condition these windshield wipers would work for it before they would put it into their cars. So he decided to let them look under the car, and after a few months they told him that they didn't want to use the windshield wipers. They had found a different windshield wiper that they decided to use instead. So he decided to take that. He understood. He pitched the windshield wipers to other car companies, but they weren't as big as Ford, so he wasn't really as concerned about it. So flashed forward a few months, he's outside and happens to notice a car driving by, and it was raining in this scene, and the car has these intermittent windshield wipers on them. And so he follows the car and ends up inside of the Ford, it was like a big party for unveiling the new models, I guess. And he then finds a guy who has one of these new Ford models and steals one of his windshield wipers and looks inside of the mechanics that had to do with the windshield wipers and found that it was an identical copy to the windshield wipers he had suggested to Ford. So he decided, well, first he had a mental breakdown. He was put into a mental institution. So after he got back home, he decided to pursue a lawsuit against Ford for infringement of his patents. And he so he starts this lawsuit, and he starts out with a lawyer, and however, throughout the process, that lawyer resigns because he didn't like how Kearns was pursuing the case. They were offered a settlement from Ford for $250,000, but Kearns denied it because he wanted the recognition for what he had done instead of the money. And throughout the whole movie, they made it seem like he was more about the recognition rather than the money. But I thought that was probably more of a far stretch, because once he already got the recognition from Ford, and they were the first ones to come out with the intermittent windshield wipers, he still continued to go after Chrysler and GM and a whole bunch of other car companies. It pretty much seemed like to get more money. He didn't really need to have that statement from every single car company that he had created the windshield wipers they used on their cars, because they got the idea from Ford, and Ford took the idea from him. So that part I thought was probably a little bit more that he was more focused on the money, unlike they made it seem. So then after he turned down the settlement and his lawyer resigned, he decided to continue the case and represent himself in the lawsuit. So he continued on and went to court, and Ford drug out the court case for something like 8 to 10 years, which seems like a very, very long time. I know the only court cases I've ever seen or dealt with did not last 8 to 10 years. However, after doing research, I found that Ford's reason for doing this was they were trying to get the patents to expire so that it would kind of make his case seem a little less valid. So it kind of showed Ford's, weakness on the matter, kind of, I guess. But they finally got to court after something like 10 years, I think, and they argued over whether or not these laws really meant anything. I think my favorite part was when they said that Kearns took different pieces and put them together. So it wasn't really a new idea because anyone could have done it. He didn't create anything in there. He just put it together in a different way to make it a new thing. So Robert Kearns' defense was they pulled out A Tale of Two Cities, and he read the first few lines. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And he continued to ask the man on the stand if Charles Dickens had created any of those words. And the man said no, but he put them together. And he said exactly, he put all of those words together in a different way. I think that was by far my favorite scene, and it was kind of like one of the greatest scenes that really, it was probably the one thing that kind of helped Kearns' case. That's kind of how the movie made it seem a little bit, was that this part of the case was that speech is what kind of made his case better. So he did win the case, and he was given a settlement of $10.1 million from Ford. This movie was pretty much historically accurate. It followed the plot from all of the articles I looked at from the different places that were covering the case, because obviously Ford was a big deal, so a lawsuit against Ford, everyone was covering it. All of them that I read pretty much follow the same plot line. Robert Kearns was representing himself as, like, the whole plot, as per the court cases, was pretty much historically accurate. The only flaw I found was that in the movie, Robert Kearns received a settlement of $10.1 million. However, in real life, he received a settlement of $10.2 million. So really, I mean, $100,000, and if that's the one flaw that they have from these court cases, that's really good for the movie and the directors, that they were able to keep it so close to what actually happened and still make a movie out of it. I thought that the casting was really good for this movie. The main character was played by, Robert Kearns was played by Greg Kinnear, and he did a fantastic job of going through the different emotions. When Kearns had a mental breakdown, he really showed that instability that he needed to have for this part. And he actually did end up receiving Actor of the Year at I think it was the Boston Movie Festival, shortly after the film was released. So he did get the credit that he deserved for the acting that he did, and I thought it was really good. The cinematography that I noticed, the lighting played a big role. Light, it seems like such a minor thing in a movie, but it really did draw my attention to different things that I probably wouldn't have paid attention to if it wasn't there. When he was in the basement, there was like an extra spotlight on his hands that were doing the tinkering around and getting them all stuck together, where if that extra spotlight hadn't been on his hands, people would have been focused more on the fact that, oh, he's working, but not actually like what he was doing. So that was in there. Another thing I noticed was the music. The music definitely evoked different feelings in the audience, and it, like, there was, when things were serious, there was serious, like, low, really dramatic, sharp beats that really kind of inflicted, like, showed that this was a serious point. Where when something was upsetting, like when his wife moved out, it was slow, sad music and evoked sympathy within the audience. So the director definitely used that to kind of show and portray the different feelings that should be felt by the audience. One of the other big things was the rain. And in this movie, rain was used to highlight the really important parts of the movie. There were 3 really important parts, and it was raining for all of them. So the first one was when he decided that something was wrong with the windshield wipers, and he decided to do something about it. And that was at the very beginning of the movie, and he was driving in the rain with his family. And he decided the problem with the windshield wipers is it was continuous and it was always squeaking. It never stopped. But if he turned them off, it was dangerous for his family because he couldn't see. The second really, really big thing that happened was when he was outside and he discovered that Ford had used his windshield wipers without giving him the credit that he deserved. It was also raining as the Ford cars were out testing and showing their windshield wipers to the new customers, or to the customers that were at this unveiling party. The third was right after he won the court case, he went out to have dinner with his family, and while they were sitting at the restaurant celebrating, it started to rain again. Now, typically in movies, serious things are kind of more shown through more like bright, sunny, like happy things. When you think of a happy celebration, typically people think of sunshine, but they chose to do rain. And that would seem weird if the movie wasn't about the guy that created the windshield wiper. So I think that they probably did this because rain obviously had a lot to do with his life, because he was focused on fixing things so that in the rain cars would work better for their drivers. So I think that's probably where that came from, and the important points definitely had to do with rain. My personal opinion of the movie was it was kind of boring. I didn't really enjoy it, and I probably won't watch it again. I know we rented it, and it just kind of seemed like a waste of the $3 or $4 I had to pay for it. It was not fun, but I guess I kind of set myself up for that by picking this movie because, I mean, really, why did I think a movie about windshield wipers would be interesting? So, I think that if you're really into court cases and kind of like seeing the different, like, what people have to go through to get their ideas and get the credit for their ideas, then I guess this would be the movie for you. It just definitely wasn't the kind of movie I would ever watch all the time, so